Hello again, everyone. Louis Setti speaking as the Blue Ridge Reporter on Wednesday, March 14th, 2012, about a very interesting story that has very wide-reaching ramifications beyond the scope of this particular presentation. This story was presented by the Associated Press regarding a NASA scientist from the NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory who was at first demoted and then terminated because as a scientist he spoke with his other NASA scientists about the idea of intelligent design being the reason for the world and all that's in it as we know. This was a scientist proposing for discussion with other scientists at NASA his interest and reliance on the concept of intelligent design, meaning God, behind all that is in the universe, which would then be a basis for organizing scientific thinking, as opposed to the evolutionary basis, which is a basis built on the concept that randomness and chance created order. Again, emphasizing this man was a NASA scientist, and he had worked on as team leader for something called the Cassini mission, exploring Saturn and its many moons. This man was a substantially competent scientific achiever. And again, his allegation is that he was demoted and then terminated because of his advancing the notion rather, that intelligent design was behind all that we can see and know. And the case now is in court in California regarding a workplace improper termination. That's the essence of the case. But what does this mean? Now, for those of you who don't believe in intelligent design, those of you who are avowed evolutionists, you're going to say, well, see, come on, who pays attention to intelligent design, and why should we care about it? It's really just a smokescreen for six-day creation. And I think it is. But that's because political correctness is so powerful. You've got to couch these things in scientific terms. You can't couch them in religious terms. But nevertheless, this man was a scientist who was proposing this as a basis for scientific discussion. But what does this mean? It means that political correctness forced out of the debate an approach, a fundamental analysis by a fellow scientist. That means that anything proposed by any scientist that deviates from political correctness may in fact be excluded from any discussion in the workplace, in academia, because you'll be threatened with being fired or may be fired. Your career may be ruined. Now, this is significant because scientists who are advancing the idea, or any idea, that deviates from political correctness are doing so for the purpose of enhancing scientific discussion and broadening the understanding by scientists in such areas as medicine, hospital treatments, the debate about the global climate or local climates even, generally all scientific research having to do even with fertilizers and pest controls and the use of chemicals, energy. So many things can be affected by this gag rule, so to speak, put in place by political correctness that would prohibit even from discussion scientific views of any type that deviate from the politically correct view. For you who are New Age proponents in particular, you probably have an interest in alternative medicines. This should be a very big story for you, because if your view of what alternative medicines can do to improve the human condition are in fact a deviation from political correctness, the principle behind this story, that such deviations can result in termination, mean that advancing your thinking can be subject to restrictions and ultimately outright exclusion. So political correctness, controlling scientific inquiry, scientific analysis, scientific arguments, is a very dangerous thing on many levels. And this is in fact being done by a government agency, NASA. NASA. So this is where we are today. If your thinking in whatever way, scientifically speaking, deviates from what's politically correct, you may be terminated, demoted, and otherwise subject to having your career impaired or completely ruined. I would recommend to those watching this to visit a website called Answers in Genesis. Answers in Genesis stands for the proposition that the world and all that was in it was created, as the Bible says, in 6 literal morning and evening 24-hour days. Go to that website, Answers in Genesis. On the second tab where it says Get Answers, go right down to the bottom and click Creation Scientists. Then there's a drop-down box that lists scientists, not me, scientists, who ascribe to 6-day creation, who endorse, believe in, find a scientific basis for 6-day creation. Look at the list. There's about 100 of them. I haven't counted them. You'll see them in all sophisticated scientific realms. Their thinking, then, must always be excluded from the public discussion, from academia, and this is significant for all people, regardless of their view of Christianity or the way in which the world was made. Thank you very much for listening and watching. This is Louis Setti speaking, the Blue Ridge Reporter.